Hello, I'm Amanda Walker, and welcome to Inside America, the show that brings you insight and analysis of the biggest issues facing the United States right now. In today's episode, trade wars, government cuts, mass deportations, and more than a little legal trouble. Eyes on foreign lands, spats with foreign leaders. He's even managed to pick a fight with Canada. Donald Trump has stormed through his first 100 days, holding nothing back.
The most successful first 100 days of any administration in the history of our country, and that's according to many, many people.
Today on Inside America, we'll ask voters for their assessment of the president's performance.
He's getting this country back on track.
So what do you say to those people who say the opposite, that he is destroying this country?
No, I think they're crazy.
Bond market is down, the stock market is down, and the dollar is down. That's like the trifecta of how bad can you up the economy.
And we'll discuss the polls, which don't make for great reading if you're in the White House.
The polls are very important. In a democracy, of the people, by the people, and for the people, what the people think really matters.
So the first 100 days can be characterized as one big test of executive power. To keep the promises he ran on, President Trump has pushed guardrails like Congress and the courts to their absolute limit. It's all been at breakneck speed, so in case you've forgotten any of it, here's a recap.
This is the best, they say, 100-day start of any president in history, and everyone is saying it.
In Macomb County, Michigan, President Trump celebrated his 100 days doing what he loves most, rallying a crowd of supporters. It's been a blitz of activity since the day he took office. On day one, he signed 26 executive orders, more than any other president. He signed pardons for the January 6 rioters and withdrew the US from the Paris Climate Accords. He extended the deadline on the TikTok ban, renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, and eliminated diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. And Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency was launched to cut waste within the federal government. Within weeks, over 30,000 federal workers were terminated, using the huge amount of power he has amassed. Broadly, that power is being wielded with impunity. His only barrier, his own country's checks and balances system, which seems shell-shocked by the barrage of activity. According to the New York Times, in 100 days, over 100 court rulings have at least paused some of Trump's executive actions.
So maybe we have to look at the judges, because that's very serious. I think it's a very serious violation.
By and large, his biggest fight with the courts has been over action towards his reported goal to deport 1 million immigrants in 1 year.
I was elected to get rid of those criminals, to get them out of our country.
And on the world stage, Trump's diplomacy ranged from jaw-dropping comments that the US would take control of Gaza,
We'll own it.
to this stunning moment in the Oval Office.
You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Topped off with his plan to impose reciprocal tariffs on the rest of the world.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. Waiting for a long time.
So Trump 2.0 has been a lot to take in. The so-called flooding the zone strategy has left Democrats gasping in outrage. Voters have watched it all with either absolute horror or sheer delight. In 2024's election, most of America shifted to the right. That includes Kent County in Maryland, which saw a 4-point move towards Donald Trump. We went to find out how these hurricane 100 days have left people feeling.
It's blossom time in picture-perfect Chestertown, surrounded by the calm waters of the Chesapeake Bay. It feels a long way from the turbulence of Washington. This is a liberal town nestled in the smallest county in Maryland, a county that went for Trump by a mere 950 votes. But don't be fooled by the cosy exteriors and leisurely pace. People here are watching closely.
In the restaurants, you don't really talk politics. You don't talk politics, you don't talk religion.
Local chef Steve is a Republican who's never voted for Trump, so passionate in his defiance that he's willing to break his own rule.
What has bothered you most in the first 100 days? There's a lot that's happened, right?
You can't. I mean, you can't. There's not one thing that has bothered me most.
But we've had tariffs,
I think
deportations.
I think the tariffs and the deportations are a disaster. I mean, again, I'm all for immigration reform. I mean, we need to adjust our immigration laws, not just willy-nilly deport people. I mean, those ICE agents should have somebody whack them in the nose. Doing tariffs to try to bring industry back. I mean, the bond market is down, the stock market is down, and the dollar is down. I mean, that's historic. That's like the trifecta of how bad can you up the economy.
Steve has customers to feed, and a lot of them are tired of talking politics. For some, the Trump era is just exhausting and a distraction from the work they're trying to do.
If you think about community, family, young people, just trying to make their lives better.
Paul, too, is a community activist in Kent County.
So as an observer, someone who is engaged, what have you made of the last few months, the first months of his presidency?
It's depressing. We try not to pay attention to it, but it's everywhere. It's embarrassing. And in a lot of ways, I feel like our country is on the global scale of things. I feel like people are looking down at America right now because of who we elected. I think that they're doing a great job of trying to distract us of things. I think they do so much little stuff and so much headline grabbing and stuff. We have to start ignoring that and pay attention to what's coming behind that, or what are they not showing us. So if they're doing all that with their right hand, gotta start looking at the left hand. What is the left hand doing? What are they trying to keep us from paying attention to?
Across the street, Anna runs a personalized gift shop.
Right.
Popular items include a bipartisan selection of mugs.
If you were to choose a mug, Anna,
That one, yeah.
so tell me why Trump is your guy.
First of all, he knows how to run the country. He's a businessman. If he runs the country like he runs a business, like he did before when he was in office, we were fine.
Is he doing that so far from what you've seen?
He's trying, yes. I think he is. He's trying. People are not liking what he's trying, but
Are you liking what he's trying?
yes, definitely. I approve the deportations. I don't think he's taking enough of them away.
Do you want to see more?
Yes.
Students who are here legally who are protesting for Gaza, do you think they should be deported?
If you're here legally,
Do you have a right to protest?
Yeah, you do.
But those people are being deported, so
That's their problem, basically.
But you stand by Trump's actions?
Yes, definitely. He's getting this country back on track. I don't care how, unless
So
he
what do you
does.
say to those people who say the opposite, that he is destroying this country?
No, I think they're crazy. Literally, I think they're nuts. I think they have mental problems.
Tariffs are seen as the issue that could turn even the most loyal Trump supporters. This is Kings Ridge Farm, just outside town. It's the beloved home of Albert Nickerson, who is also the Republican County Commissioner.
So tariffs are a big issue, and farmers are seen as a group that's going to be negatively impacted. Are you feeling that? Do you agree with that?
I think that, I think right now, most of the farmers that I talk to are feeling it, but are willing to ride this wave, and because I think on the other end of it, we're all optimistic that it would inevitably be a good thing.
Are you willing to ride the wave?
I'm absolutely willing to ride the wave. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a danger that the tariffs will turn farmers, other people against Trump? Especially when he promised a good economy, promised people being more prosperous.
I would imagine that there's a danger of that with any leader whenever they make a decision. And I guess what I would say is it's just a matter of how long it takes.
But do you think there will come a point where people get impatient and say, enough pain?
Well, I think, yeah, absolutely. I think
result.
that, sure. I mean, I don't, and I think that that'll happen. I think it'll be different for everybody. Here is about 1,100 acres, and we own a couple of other places.
Albert takes us through fields that will see a rotation of soybeans, corn and wheat this year. What the Trump administration has in store is less predictable. Either way, Albert is on board for the ride. The extreme pace of the first 100 days is something most people can agree on. Trump's actions are showing no signs of cooling off. For many of his supporters, he's become the ultimate symbol of America. For now, his actions are almost secondary to that.
Now, it's worth remembering that Donald Trump got 2.5 million more votes than Kamala Harris, a relatively narrow margin, but still a popular vote victory. The first time that's happened for a Republican since George Bush 20 years ago. So it was a decent place to start off. The president claims people are happy with his presidency and that he has great polls. But the latest 100 days numbers suggest otherwise. Republican pollster Whit Ayres gave me his analysis of the current Trump data.
Donald Trump started off more popular than he was during his first term, although less popular than almost all other presidents at the start of their term. But his popularity has gone down rather dramatically over the course of the first 100 days. He started off in the low 50s with job approval. He now looks more like he's in the low 40s and in at least one poll at 39%. That's a pretty significant drop in 100 days.
Yeah, so he's underwater very early on. What do we read from that?
Donald Trump was elected to do four things primarily: to bring down inflation, to juice the economy, to stop illegal immigration, and to get away from woke culture. At least on the economy, his tariffs have raised prices and slowed economic growth, which is the exact opposite of what people thought they were voting for in November. His best marks are on illegal immigration. He's basically stopped illegal immigration at the border with Mexico. But the way he's gone about it has undermined even his strength. Almost all Americans believe we should deport illegal immigrants who've committed crimes, but they don't believe you ought to take someone mistakenly deported to an overseas prison without a hearing or any due process, where there's no possibility of parole. That's fundamentally against basic American freedoms that are enshrined in the Constitution.
So you're referring there's one specific case, of course, Kilmar Abrego Garcia,
Exactly.
who was wrongly sent to that jail in El Salvador. That has been a real focus, hasn't it, that the Trump administration hasn't backed down on. Is that going to ultimately be very damaging? How should they handle this going forward?
They should do what the Supreme Court said they should do by a 9-0 vote, and that is facilitate his return. Now, the Attorney General of the United States basically thumbed her nose at the Supreme Court. She said, well, if he shows up at the border, we'll facilitate him coming across. That's not what the Supreme Court said. And so you have a poll from Pew Research, one of the most respected research organizations in the country, that said that 78% of Americans, including a vast majority of Republicans, believe that the Trump administration should follow court orders, and if the court tells them to stop doing something, they should stop. 78% is overwhelming, and if they continue to thwart courts, particularly the Supreme Court that has 3 Trump appointees on it, that's going to hurt them in the long run.
So he's projecting strength right now, but these numbers show a more precarious situation. What would your advice be to Republicans at this point, who are very much tied to Trump right now? Will that continue?
I think the best advice for Republicans is to drive those factors that put Donald Trump in the White House. The tariffs work directly against his promises during the campaign to bring down inflation and juice the economy. So I think focusing on bringing down inflation and getting economic growth increased will be the keys for Donald Trump going forward. I don't see how he can do that by continuing to drive these blanket tariffs on everybody, including our closest allies.
But the things you just outlined there would require some backing down, and that's not in the Trump playbook, is it?
Well, is it? He announced he was going to have massive tariffs on everybody, including China, and the next week he backed off from that. So he'll never admit that he's backed off. But if you look at his actions are being calibrated by the reaction of the economic markets and the financial institutions.
Will he be looking at these polls and caring about them?
Who knows? There are people in the White House who have said he's going to do whatever he wants, regardless of the consequences. We'll see. I'm not so sure that's true.
Do the polls matter? I mean, when you look at it from the point of view of institutions who are being targeted by Donald Trump, if there is a sense that the majority of people are not liking what they see, could they be emboldened to push back more by these polls? Are they consequential?
Amanda, you're asking a pollster whether polls matter, so I think the obvious answer is, of course they matter. It makes a big difference whether the American people are behind what you're doing or against what you're doing. It makes a big difference for his supporters in Congress, whether or not they feel emboldened to get out and stop what he's doing or at least disagree with him, or whether they feel like they need to remain quiet. The polls are very important. In a democracy of the people, by the people, and for the people, what the people think really matters.
So the polls indicate that some of the people who moved towards Trump may now think he's gone too far. So what's the likelihood of him receiving that message and reining things in, especially when most of his base love what he's doing? Let's get into that and more with our panel, geopolitical advisor and commentator Rina Shah and NPR radio host Todd Zwillich. So Todd, let me start with you. So those people in the middle who liked what he was saying on the economy and immigration, basically people thought they would be better off financially and that the immigration situation would be improved in terms of illegal immigrants. He's gone further than that, and he hasn't necessarily delivered on the economy. So are these polls reflective of those people having basically decided that this isn't what they voted for?
They appear to be. And when you go down the list of individual issues, many of the ones that you mentioned, you see Donald Trump bleeding support, and it does appear that he's bleeding support from the middle. Tariffs are starting to affect people's personal bottom line. They're starting to realize it. Some corporations are starting to make that example. Amazon, for instance, is advertising or threatening to advertise how much of your inflated price now on their platform comes from tariffs, and they want you to know who's responsible for that. Donald Trump said in his typically inflated rhetoric that prices would come down on day one. They have not. On immigration, where Donald Trump was the strongest during the election, this is where he performs still the best with the public, but he is underwater by 4, 5, perhaps even 6 points. And on specific parts of immigration, the parts that have been making news, deportations and extraordinary renditions of legal immigrants in the United States, the public doesn't like what they see. It's clear this is a very different message than securing the border or securing the American economy for Americans. That's not what people are seeing. And on the Abrego Garcia case, I mean, Donald Trump's approval is about 30%. That's just the base. That's just the right wing.
So this is the man who was wrongly deported to a jail in El Salvador, and they've basically said nothing we can do about that. That is not sitting well with voters, is it?
More than that, they've actually not followed orders. They've doubled down on their mistake. They've not admitted it. And as a former Republican political strategist, I have to tell you, this is the wrong playbook for them. Because in essence, what their one mistake has done is amplified their ineptitude on a range of issues. And I think I want to scale back, though, and look at kind of how we criticize this president. We have a different litmus test for him almost, because it's not like he's learning how to pull the levers of government. He's already had 4 years to learn all that. So this 100 days with the shock and awe, it's really quite something, because it comes with a side of chaos. And I'm wondering how it's going to play out with Republicans in this next 100, because right now I haven't seen the full erosion of GOP support that's been talked about. I think that's actually, the discontent has been a little overstated, only for Republicans though, but jittery independents, that's who both parties need to be worrying about right now.
So sitting in that building behind us, is he looking at these polls and thinking, right, I'm going to start to do things a bit differently? Or is that just not the Donald Trump approach to life?
It's not the Donald Trump approach to life. I don't know, Rena would know better than I don't think that he's necessarily responsive at this point to ordinary political imperatives that we're used to. Sir, your approval is at 45%, we need to come around. A couple of things. Donald Trump is sensitive to the stock market. He's sensitive to what CEO friends have to say.
Right.
He's sensitive to legacy. But Donald Trump is either never running again because this is his second term, or he doesn't intend to leave office. He has joked about a third term, which is unconstitutional. But if you don't plan on ever leaving, and I believe he does not plan on ever leaving, you're not terribly responsive to popular polls, because that's not what drives your ability to stay in office.
Will he leave or not? I think that's a whole other show. But the idea of promises made, promises kept, they're really touting that, aren't they? But he hasn't stuck to everything. The war is still going on in Ukraine. Food prices have not been brought down. I mean, there are plenty of things that haven't been achieved, right?
Well, in this week in which he's marking 100 days, he's gone out on the trail and he said to Americans, it takes time. Did you think this was going to happen overnight? And I actually don't mind that line of reasoning that he's trying to get voters to accept him with, because it does take time for your policies to creep in and really have the intended effect. The Trump administration, are doing the right thing right now by touting 3 signature areas of achievement, which are border security, economic investment, and government efficiency. He's saying, I change your life for the better, and you're going to feel me for years to come, even if he does leave.
It's also not where Donald Trump, however, is spending most of his time, at least his public-facing time. Cracking down on universities and trying to tell them who to hire, who to fire, extracting concessions from East Coast elite universities where most people never see or ever go, has nothing to do with the everyday fortunes of average Americans. Beating up on individual immigrants, lying about them in the press, as Donald Trump and the Trump administration have done. I use that word because they say different things politically than they say in court, where they're not allowed to lie to a judge's face or there are consequences. Those things are different. These things have nothing to do with the individual fortunes of average Americans. They may like to hear about investments in infrastructure and chips, but that's not where he's been spending most of his energy.
And nor does Retribution, because that was a big campaign trail promise. And he's using government power to go after his perceived enemies. I think that must be taking up a lot of his time.
It's certainly sucking up the oxygen in sort of the mainstream media, because it is so bombastic. Arresting judges like the one we just saw arrested, a known Democrat. And Republicans say she broke the law. She protected somebody that shouldn't have been protected. She went outside of her judicial bounds. She's broken the law as a private citizen. So what Pam Bondi, Attorney General, and Kash Patel, head of FBI, the judiciary apparatus that Donald Trump has built around him is not only loyal, they are ready to exact revenge as well. Going a step further in this way of saying we are going to perhaps even subpoena journalists, that really worries me. I don't like that as somebody that really supports the First Amendment, because that freedom of speech, that freedom of the press is something we haven't seen shaken in many years before Trump came to the scene. So his grievances with the press corps take shape daily, and I think it's the wrong move, because on the one hand you've got an entire crop of Republicans out there on Capitol Hill who say, hey, focus on this pro-growth agenda that's intended to boost American innovation. Oh, but wait, over there is some really disturbing stuff going on when you talk about doing a perp walk of a judge, for example. That's just something I think a lot of Americans do not know what to make of it, because we've just not heard of anything like it in the modern era of the American presidency. And I think Trump and team are fine with that, because it characterizes them as so different, so proactive, as a contrast to Biden.
And just briefly from both of you, we talk about this a lot, it's a perennial question, but the base, the loyalists, are there cracks, or is this base just this solid thing that will never shake because Donald Trump is ultimately a symbol for people?
I don't see signs of any real cracks in the base, and I think the reason they're loyal, as Donald Trump demands. The media ecosystem that the Trump base lives in does not watch this show, does not watch conversations like this, does not see reports of the astounding public corruption going on at the White House, of people pouring tens, even hundreds of millions of dollars into meme coins, putting money in Trump's pockets, things that would astound, offend, and disgust ordinary voters. They don't see that. Yes, they may tell you there are individual little things that they don't like. That's politics. The base during Donald Trump's career has been impenetrable. I predict it shall remain impenetrable.
Marina, just briefly, if you will, is the base impenetrable?
No. I think, look, he's going to really mess up if he betrays core promises. You know, things like softening on immigration is going to upset them. Focusing on domestic optics right now seems to have served him well. A couple missteps here, particularly on the economic front, and he risks losing that core support.
Interesting. Okay. Rena, Todd, thank you both so much. Only 3 years and 9 months to go. Where will it take us? Thank you for watching. Do join us next time on Inside America.